Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Fantasy Roundup for Tuesday, November the 22nd. I am Zach Ewing. This is Spencer the Guru Urquhart. We are here on bet.nola.com and the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. We will recap Week 11 of the NFL slate, the fantasy football slate. Look forward to Week 12, of course, Thanksgiving week. And we're going to have a special look at the Thanksgiving DFS slate, just those three games. So if you want to add a little extra action to your Turkey Day football, we will talk about that. And we'll, of course, go into waiver wires, who's got to go, and our Sunday DFS suggestions as well. So, Spencer, not quite as high scoring of a week that we just had as we'd seen the past couple of weeks from a fantasy perspective. So, defense is getting a little bit of payback, but still some good performances.
Yeah, for sure. They got a lot of payback, actually, the defenses. It's been kind of a weird year, but this year really exemplified that as far as it's just hard to predict on a weekly basis who's going to go off. They just don't have as many of those must-start studs as we normally have. You guys like Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb freaking struggled. It's so tough to predict, but that's why we got to study it, man. We got to try to get a leg up, and I feel like this week might be a little better being that we'll have a full slate of games. And also, I feel like the offenses will adjust back somewhat.
Yeah, and I mean, look, it's going to come in ebbs and flows, of course, and that makes it more fun sometimes when there's 20 guys who everybody's going to start every single week. I mean, then basically who wins these leagues comes down to the drafts and not the managing of the team week to week. Before we get started, want to let everyone know that we are brought to you by Caesar Sportsbook. You can sign up for a Caesar Sportsbook using code NOLAFULL, up to $1,250 back in terms of a free bet if you lose your first one. You can also go to lsuposter.com and get a free LSU poster set of 3 replica front pages from LSU championships past or Joe Burrow's Heisman, whatever you want to do. You get to pick them out, which 3 you want. All you got to do is sign up and make at least a $10 bet on a new account on Caesar Sportsbook. With that said, I'd like to remind you to hit the like button, subscribe button, share button on the Bayou Bets YouTube page. If you are watching on Facebook, feel free to flip over to Bayou Bets so we can see your comments a little bit faster and trying to grow the audience over there. So the Bayou Bets YouTube page is the place to be. With that said, we'll dig into some Week 11 results, top scoring quarterbacks. No Justin Fields for the first time in about a month, Spencer, but Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow doing their thing, and then some more surprising names after that.
Yeah, Mahomes and Burrow have been some of the few trustworthy QBs this year. Not a whole lot of consistency at the position, but yeah, both of them have been outstanding. But after them, it gets kind of wild. Jacoby Brissett, big game, Jimmy G, Daniel Jones. This gives me hope for Deshaun Watson. The fact that the Browns are throwing it as much as they've been, this tells me that they're kind of transitioning toward when Watson comes back, to where I think he'll be able to be fantasy relevant pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think if look, the last time Deshaun Watson played, and we're not going to get into all the off-field stuff, which is awful, and we could argue whether he should be suspended more. But the last time he played, look, the guy was a superstar. And maybe there'll be some rust, but you got to figure he's a QB1 right off the bat.
Yeah, probably so, especially since he'll get to face his old team, the Texans, who have a horrendous defense.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. And one more game for the Browns without Watson. That's this week against the Bucs, and then Deshaun Watson back next week. Running backs in Week 11, superstar was Tony Pollard of the Cowboys. I know a couple of us have been beating the drum for years saying Pollard had surpassed Ezekiel Elliott in terms of talent. He goes completely off, especially in the receiving game. And then with Joe Mixon out with a concussion, Samaje Perine comes up big.
Yeah, that was really surprising to see Perine not only take advantage of Mixon, but to have a huge game as a result of it. Didn't really see that. I mean, no one saw it coming. Everyone assumed Mixon would play, but when he got knocked out, probably people would think, Samaje Perine, he's not very good. But he shows that he can be heavily involved as a receiver. He caught 3 receiving touchdowns, so he's somebody that's definitely worth keeping an eye on. We'll get to him later in the waiver segment. But outside of him, nothing too shocking here. Najee making an appearance in the top five is a little surprising, but King Henry and Jamal Williams, they've been solid all year.
Yeah, a couple of workhorses there at the bottom. What do you make of the Lions running back share situation there, Spencer? Jamal Williams getting all the carries. DeAndre Swift still scoring some touchdowns. He was the RB1 to start the year, but since he got hurt, came back, it just doesn't seem like his usage just popped back up.
Right. I still think there's hope for Swift, though, as we'll get to in our Thanksgiving DFS slate, because I feel like with the Lions, their defense is not very good to where, like, it's going to be hard for them most weeks to be able to really lean on Williams, because Williams is more of a big back, early down back, to where Swift being the receiving back, I think better days are ahead for him.
All right. Moving on to wide receivers. Best performances in Week 11. A Raider and a former Raider, Devontae Adams, Amari Cooper, lead the list. And then a surprise, Joshua Palmer. Keenan Allen was back for the Chargers. Didn't get very many targets. It was Palmer again who goes over 30 points.
Right, yeah, then Mike Williams was back too, but he left the game early, re-aggravated his ankle injury, so Palmer took advantage of that and is now become, I'd say, a must-start, being that the Chargers throw it a lot. He's becoming just somebody that you've got to play him, at least as a flex most weeks, because he's really gotten the trust of Justin Herbert now. And then, yeah, Amari Cooper bounced back. T. Higgins, huge week, took advantage of Jamar Chase being out again. And then Debo, nice to see Debo shake back.
Yeah, some big names there at the bottom. And, of course, Jamar Chase. He's actually listed as questionable for this week. That would beat his timeline to come back for the Bengals by a couple of weeks. They play at Tennessee this week. My guess is it's going to be another week before we see Jamar Chase back. So that helps T. Higgins, helps Tyler Boyd. Because that Bengals offense, now the Titans are a tougher defense, but the Bengals certainly will throw the ball and can move the ball. Tight end time, Travis Kelce, the GOAT, 35.5 points. George Kittle, when he's healthy, he's productive. No real surprises here, Spencer, other than maybe Austin Hooper popping up at 19 points.
Yeah, that was a big surprise. Caught a couple touchdowns against Green Bay. And yeah, I wouldn't count on that moving forward, because Tennessee, they took advantage of just the fact that Green Bay they stink. I mean, I'm officially off of Green Bay. I was thinking that, maybe they could make a comeback. It's Aaron Rodgers, but being at his age and the fact that it's not very good. I mean, their defense struggles. They don't run the ball like they should. Outside of Christian Watson, there's just not much to like there. So Tennessee, get back to that point, Tennessee, that was an outlier. Their passing game's been consistently bad all year.
Yeah, and tough to count on those tight ends week in and week out. You're watching the Fantasy Roundup on bet.nola.com. Zach Ewing and Spencer the Guru here with you. If you have your comments or questions, feel free to leave them. If you're on Twitter, you'll have to get over to the YouTube page to leave comments. We will not be able to see the Twitter comments, but on Facebook and YouTube, we can see them. We'll show them live, respond to your trade questions, free agent questions, whatever you might have. A few leagues out there with trade deadlines still in the next week. Most of them have probably passed. To wrap up Week 11, our fantasy stars, we talked about him, Spencer. You went with Mr. Pollard.
Yeah, I had to, man. He's just was so productive this past week. Got it done on the ground and through the air. Just showing that even with Zeke, he can produce. So that's was quite the showing there, and feel like now he's one of those where you gotta start him. He was like a guy, should I flex him? Maybe not. Maybe the matchup, blah blah blah. Now it's simple. You gotta start him.
Yeah, got to start him. And now the question is, do you start Elliott? Which I have a take on that for later as well as we move on. My fantasy star, Travis Kelce, and part of this, look, only six catches is low for Kelce, but 115 yards and 3 scores out of him. Only 4 tight ends have gone over 30 points in a game this year. He's 2 of those 4. So, and part of this too is that you just got to love those guys who produce on Sunday night. You think the week is lost, and then on Sunday night, maybe you have some dinner, you turn on the game in the middle of the second quarter, and all of a sudden you have life again, and Kelce just keeps scoring. Chiefs keep scoring. They're never out of it, and you're never out of it if you have Mahomes or Kelce or really those are the only 2, I guess, who you can consistently count on in that offense anymore. But when Juju Smith-Schuster's healthy, like you're just never out of these fantasy games because any one of those guys can go off.
Right. And then for our sleeper segment, I have another Chiefs receiver listed, so stay tuned for that.
All right. And finally, in week 11, our listener league, Bucktown finally goes down. My buddy Aaron, who is I Will Lutz for you, took him down in the upset of the week. So Bucktown
Nice.
falls to 10-1, still in obviously great shape to make the playoffs and most likely be the number one seed with a 2-game lead on the field and about a 40-point lead in terms of the tiebreaker, which is points scored. So Bucktown in first, then it's Bama Fikes and Team Minoka at 8-3. I'm sitting at 7-4. I'm the team on the bubble, and it's the two Urquharts who are coming after me. Mr. Urquhart, original Saints fan, and the Guru with Guru squad number 16. Also, Aaron's there too at 5-6, a couple games behind me with 4 to play.
Yep, man. You be in one again. Probably a little
making a little run,
there,
but yeah,
at least he's still fighting, And then the 49ers helped me. Well, they helped me last night, but it didn't really. I mean, they did pretty well, but I didn't quite get enough to knock off Minoka. I really needed that one. I'd have been only a game out of the playoffs, but now I'm backs against the wall again, and this is about it, man. I've got to pretty much win out from here. At least win. I think there's 4 left. At least win 3 out of 4, because if not, there's not enough games left. I mean, my team looks good on paper, but they just haven't delivered the results that they need to.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at just the math, 3 out of 4 puts you at 8-7. Well, 3 teams already have 8 wins. I would have to go 1-3.
Yeah,
and
that
then
might not even do it.
you would probably win the tiebreaker in that case. If I go 1-3, you go 3-1, you're going to make up those 47 points. But that's going to be tough. I mean, and you look at the teams that are 3-8, not officially eliminated yet, but pretty much done. I mean, even if you win out, you're 7-8. You're expecting me then to go 0-4, plus all those 5-6 teams. None of them win 3 out of 4. So very difficult math there. So it's looking like about a 6-team, maybe a 7-team race at this point for the playoffs, and then for those Saints-Panthers tickets. So that's a look at Week 11. Week 12, of course, Thanksgiving week. We have some special DFS for you for the Thanksgiving slate. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first, for you in season-long leagues, waiver wire advice, waiver deadlines tonight, tomorrow morning. Spencer, some injury replacements here, also kind of speculating on the free agent market.
Right, yeah, I had to go with OBJ this week as far as somebody, to me, you should stash him. Like I said last week about Deshaun Watson. Yeah, he's not going to help you right away, but if you stash him, he could be a league winner in the fantasy playoffs, because like I said at the beginning of the show, there's just less and less set it and forget it options. So Odell, when healthy, is really productive. So if he lands in the right spot, could definitely be worth more than just a bench stash. Could be a start potentially, but yeah, as far as the other positions, went with guys that probably be more just kind of plug and plays this week. A couple of Commanders there, and Heineke and Logan Thomas is more of a matchup thing. They get Atlanta, who's been awful against the quarterbacks and tight ends, so thinking that they could do well there in that spot. And then Samaje Perine with no Joe Mixon, most likely, in concussion protocol stricter these days, especially after the Tua situation, and now the Stafford situation. He's back in it, so definitely not going to rush Mixon back. So I would think that Perine's a good play this week and is worth, if you still have fab money left, spend that fab money if you need a running back.
Yeah, I mean, keep an eye on the injury report that comes out today. See what Mixon's status is. You got to speculate a little bit. So you need somebody to drop. So we're there for you too. But first, I just want to stop right here before we get to who you drop. If you're watching this, and there's way more people watching this than there are likes, hit the like button for me. Just click it. I don't want to beg. Let's get a couple likes on there.
It takes like literally less than a second.
Yeah, so. just click the little thumbs up. It's easy. There's way more people watching this than there are likes. So get the like button down on there. Hit a share button. Tell your friends about us. And Spencer will tell you who to drop as you want to pick up those guys.
Yeah, as we add people, you got to figure out who to cut. And there's some names on here that, like Kirk Cousins, he had been good for a while, but should have figured he was going to fall off. And, he gets another tough matchup Thursday night against the Patriots.
Primetime Kirk.
Yeah, exactly. And we know how that goes. So there's just too much of a sample size there. You look at he's been a 10-year veteran. It's just like, we just know what it is. It's every year with him. People want to believe that he's found something, turned the corner. But I feel like when you've got that much data, you just can't ignore it. So to me, you just got to move on. And then Melvin Gordon, the Broncos moved on from him. So to me, you got to move on from him for fantasy purposes because I don't see him landing. I mean, all the good teams, I feel like their running back situation is pretty stable. Even if he lands on a good offense, he'll probably just be a compliment. And then Chase Claypool hadn't worked out there in Chicago, and now Justin Fields banged up. That's not good news there. So Claypool, just you got to move on. And then Kyle Pitts with the injury, torn MCL, likely out for the year. Could come back later, but even if he does, I don't see him doing a whole lot. So I'd just move on.
If you are a Justin Fields owner who is worried he may not play, and I don't think he's going to play this Sunday, certainly maybe not the rest of the year, you mentioned Taylor Heineke. Who are some other quarterbacks who may be available? Maybe a Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers you're willing to go back to if you're in that kind of desperate situation where you need somebody.
Yeah, they could be in. I mean, yeah, Rodgers for sure. He's still rostered in a lot of leagues, though. But yeah, I would say he could be a decent stream if he's there. Jimmy G against the Saints could be an intriguing stream. Jared Goff, if having to play catch up against Buffalo, and they get some garbage time. Jacoby Brissett, his last week against Tampa, might be able to put up some points going against Brady. So there's some names out there. There's some names. Heineke's just one that I kind of like him because he hadn't done too much the past couple weeks, but I feel like he's kind of due to shake back this week and has a good matchup to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of good matchups, there are 3 good ones on Thanksgiving. You got Bills Lions at 11:30. I don't know what time you roll out of bed on Thanksgiving, Spencer, but it's probably not a whole lot before that. If you're anything like I was before I had kids, like you just sort of roll. Oh, there's football on TV already. All right, and then while dinner's getting ready, you're watching Cowboys and Giants. That starts, I think, at 3 or 3:15, and then the primetime game at 7:15 between the Vikings and the Patriots. So 3 games on Thanksgiving. One of the cool things, you go to DraftKings, FanDuel, any of the daily fantasy sites, they have slates just for those. They have them when there's just a Thursday night game for 1 game. But honestly, those get a little bit difficult because you have to pivot down to somebody that nobody else is going to play, or else you'll never win. 3 games is a little more palatable. So we came up with our Thanksgiving Day DFS values. And I think both you and I are on the same page here, Spence, but you go first. The total of that Bills-Lions game is like 10 points higher, 11 points higher than either of the other 2. That's the one you should be targeting here.
Yeah, for sure, because I just don't really trust any of the other quarterbacks in this slate. I mean, Dak is kind of hit or miss. Daniel Jones is hit or miss. Kirk's in prime time. Mac Jones stinks. And then Jared Goff. So we know the drill. They're all hit or miss. So to me, you got to go with Josh Allen for this slate because, you got to pay up. You got to pay up. So it's hard to call him a value. But I think he actually will be because I feel like he's going to put up enough numbers to where he'll justify paying up for him. And then there's some other values to be had at the skill spots. DeAndre Swift, I mentioned him earlier about that being the passing down back there. The Lions will probably be trailing. I think he'll be able to rack up some receptions. And he's still been able to find the end zone despite Williams being the lead runner. So I see some hope for Swift this week. Darius Slayton is going to see more looks this week. Rondale Robinson, torn ACL. Daniel Jones has really been leaning on Slayton as of late, so I think that'll continue. And then Dalton Schultz has done well against the Giants in the past. They're kind of vulnerable against tight ends.
Yeah, and that's the afternoon game, Giants, Cowboys. And by the way, as I'm going to show mine here, Spencer did pick Gabe Davis of the Bills as his wide receiver. I made him change because I had already locked mine in. Usually I'm the one who changes, but Gabe Davis a good look too in that game. And as you can see, I'm targeting Lions, Bills. I like Bills pass catchers. If you don't want to pay up for Diggs, my only problem with Allen is that I think a lot of people are going to think like you do, Spencer, and say, well, he's the only reliable guy here. I got to take him. Or maybe some people go to Dak. But if you want to pivot, you want to be a little bit different. Look, the Bills are 9-point favorites. If they get out to a lead, the Lions are going to throw the ball. And that's where DeAndre Swift comes in too. But if Jared Goff throws 40, 45 passes, he's going to outscore 5,200 a lot more than Josh Allen's going to outscore 8,000. If that is the game script. And so I think there's really an opportunity to play both sides of that game here That total is 54. The other totals are like 41 and 43. Attack that game and see if you can build a big lead in this DFS slate and then hold on. I do like Ezekiel Elliott, and part of that is just because it's the short week. Tony Pollard got a bunch of touches on Sunday. That it's more than his body is used to, maybe, and so I do think they shift back to Elliott, who's still getting usage, who's still talented, and you can run on the Giants in the last couple of weeks. The Lions showed that last week. Texans showed that to a certain extent the week before. So if if you don't want to pay up for Pollard, you're afraid everyone's going to be on Pollard, and you want to pivot, I don't mind Elliott here. What do you say?
Yeah, that's an interesting take, and I never really thought of it that way, but I could maybe see it because, yeah, Pollard's normally not a workhorse like that, so they might lean on Zeke. So, and Zeke still scored a couple of touchdowns, so I could see it. Me personally, I have trouble trusting Zeke, but from just a logical perspective, it would make sense that he would see more work.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. If you have Pollard and Elliott in a season-long league, I'm starting Pollard. I mean, I think that's the play. But in a DFS scenario, I just want people to understand the strategy of DFS is different. You don't always want the better player because price factors into it, right? Like where Pollard's $500 more, you might be able to save, but also the usage factors into it. If everybody picks Tony Pollard and Tony Pollard goes off, well, nobody gained anything. But if you pick Elliott, I mean, the point of these things is to win big. It doesn't, there's 10,000 people. It doesn't matter if you finish in the top 500, which is very good, but it's only going to give you a couple dollars. You're looking to finish in the top 10, right? And win thousands of dollars. That's what we're trying to do here. You can't take the guy that everybody else is taking too. And that's where I go Ezekiel Elliott. Not a lot of people are going to play him. Not a lot are thinking about him. There is a chance, there is a universe that exists in which Ezekiel Elliott outscores Tony Pollard. And if Tony Pollard was owned by 40% of the people, Elliott's only owned by 10%, you have a huge advantage then, and that's how you pop into the top half of these tournaments. So that's where I'm going at from that perspective. We also have Sunday DFS for you as you're watching Bayou Bets here. You're watching Fantasy Roundup on the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. Give us a like, hit the subscribe button. We're back here every Tuesday at 2:00 to take you through fantasy football. And we also do Sunday DFS every week. So, Spencer, your Sunday slate DFS picks.
Right.
Whoops, that's not you. That's not you at all. There you are.
Alrighty, yeah, because I was like, I don't have Heineke for DFS too, because I had Geno going with Geno against the Raiders. I think that's a good play. And the Raiders do well against Russell Wilson, but we know how bad he stinks. So I think Geno is gonna light him up this week. Got him stacked up with Tyler Lockett. I thought about Metcalf. I think they're both kind of interchangeable. So I went with Lockett, being that he was a little cheaper from a value standpoint. And then Latavius Murray, Melvin Gordon's gone, Chase Edmonds is out. Murray should be in a workhorse role this week. And I believe, who are the Broncos playing? I think it's
Broncos are playing Carolina.
Yep, great matchup. Carolina stinks against the run, so I feel like it's a really good value there with Murray. And then Foster Moreau, another matchup play. Seahawks struggle against tight ends, and still no Darren Waller.
Yeah, I like this here. And Spencer writes a fantasy matchups column that comes out either Thursday evening or Friday morning, usually about player props, but also DFS matchups to target. And the one I think my favorite is what Spencer calls the low-key shootout of the week. Because, look, the shootout of the week, it's easy for DFS players to look at that and say, oh, well, let's think of a good example this week.
We thought maybe Vikings Dallas would be
it could have been Vikings Dallas last week,
and the Vikings just completely fell flat. Where the low key shootout was, I had it as Giants Lions, and the players on both sides did good in that one.
But again, that's the point: is if we can target one that no one else is looking at, very few other people are looking at. That's a huge advantage in daily fantasy, and so I think I like Seahawks Raiders for that. I mean, I think both teams are going to move the ball. And so you have a little play back there where you're looking at both. You're looking at both the Seahawks and the Raiders. So I have a little bit of the same thing. Commanders stack here: Taylor Heineke and Terry McLaurin. Falcons secondary is super leaky. Commanders have been able to pass the ball a lot more the last couple of weeks, so I'm going with that. Dolphins, I'll tell you what, one thing about the Dolphins, they're 12 and a half point favorites over the Texans. They're going to run the ball. This is one of the, I don't know if I'd take a minus 12 and a half because I think they're going to want to get out of there with a win because they go to San Francisco next week. So this is one of those win the game, get out of there healthy. Mike McDaniel going back to San Francisco. It's going to be a big deal for him. It's a long flight. It's a huge game between, I mean, possible Super Bowl preview, if we're being honest. Miami and San Francisco could be. So this is a game against Houston where the Dolphins are going to want to get out to a lead, pound the rock. Houston's not going to compete if you get up 10 points on them. So I like Jeff Wilson. I like Raheem Mostert also in that situation. And then my tight end, David Njoku of the Browns. Buccaneers have struggled a little bit against tight ends this year, but they do have a good pass rush. So Jacoby Brissett, you can see him dumping that ball off, and Njoku getting a bunch of targets. So once again, we're back every Tuesday at 2 o'clock on the Fantasy Roundup. Spencer has a waiver wire column on Tuesdays. He's got that fantasy matchups and player prop column on Thursday evening, Friday morning, some weeks, depending on when some of the player props are available. So check all that stuff out. And then we're going to wrap things up here with our sleepers of the week. And I'll go first. I already mentioned him, Ezekiel Elliott. Maybe I'm cheating by putting him in two places, but he's just sneaky this week. I think Pollard got a lot of usage. Short week. Cowboys could pivot back to Zeke on Thanksgiving afternoon. Spencer, you go MVS.
Right, yeah, I teased that earlier, and I think he's going to do well in this matchup because they're facing the Rams, to where the Rams, as we saw, get burned. They can get burned down the field. Got burned by Chris Olave, who is obviously really talented. But I think MVS is going to do for a shake back. He's been kind of down as of late, but he's just one of those ones that pops up out of nowhere a lot of times. And I think this could be that week for him with Mecole Hardman's on IR. So they won't have to worry about him. And then Juju, even if Juju comes back, he's more just the slot guy. He's not really a threat to MVS's snaps and targets. So I'm thinking that he could, if he can catch a deep bomb or two, he could have a big week and be one of those plug and play flexes that ends up winning you weeks.
By the way, my sleeper last week was Melvin Gordon III, who actually didn't have a terrible week. 31 yards rushing, 5 catches for 39 yards receiving. It wasn't a disaster, but these are sleepers. So, sometimes they just don't wake up like this.
Yeah, I think mine was decent. I think it was wasn't it Peoples Jones?
I think you had Nico Collins last week.
Oh, Nico,
Peoples Jones maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
but you did have Peoples Jones was good 2 weeks ago for sure. So yeah, listen, they're sleepers. They're not guarantees, because if they were guarantees, they wouldn't be sleepers. Sometimes they just never wake up.
Well, yeah, he wouldn't even be available. It wouldn't even be options if they, you got to try to deep dive and find these guys. They're not always going to hit, but sometimes when your back's against the wall, you've got to swing for the fences and think outside the box, because if you don't, you're going to if you just go with the same thing, if you got, trying to think of an example of just some running back that's kind of in a bad spot, like Deontay Foreman. Like if you don't feel comfortable with that, if you want to swing for the fences, sometimes that can pay off.
Well, that's going to do it for us on the Fantasy Roundup for Week 12. Spencer is available on Twitter and Instagram at Spencer the Guru. Now, you changed your handle, didn't you? At least on Twitter.
Well, yeah, I still have the Guru brand Twitter. So I have my betting Twitter too, Bet with Spence. So
Bet with Spence. But yeah, check out Spencer the Guru on Twitter or Instagram if you have questions throughout the week. And good luck with waiver wires, your DFS on Thursday, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Before that, though, tune in Bayou Bets tomorrow, 4 o'clock on these same channels. We're going to go through Saints 49ers, LSU, Texas A&M, little Ohio State, Michigan. Lots to talk about. Max Meyer from Caesar Sportsbook will be on the show to talk some trends, where the money's going. It'll really help you on your holiday weekend betting. So 4 o'clock tomorrow, last thing you do before you leave work for the holiday weekend. We will see you there and look forward to that. For Spencer the Guru, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for joining us on the Fantasy Roundup.